Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we've just said goodbye to the third Doctor. And so, as with the first two, it's time for a quick glance at what his adventures look like away from the main TV show. As with the first two Doctors, the adventures of the third Doctor are not just limited to the TV show, with comic strips, short stories, novels, audio plays, even stage plays bulking out the life of the third Doctor. And even though I am a lifelong fan of Doctor Who, there is so much of it now across all of these different media that I reiterate, there is no way that I have experienced it all. So this will not be a comprehensive look at every single third Doctor adventure in various media. This will just be a brief glance at what they look like, pausing to take a look at more notable ones, or ones that I've enjoyed personally. Each of his TV companions get more adventures with him, but as with the first and second Doctors, the third Doctor is also given new original companions created especially for the expanded media. The TV and TV action comics continued from the first and second Doctors with the third Doctor, but unlike those two, he wasn't numbered with his grandchildren John and Gillian. Instead, he had a companion called Arnold for some of them, a 32nd century boy who actually worked as a jailer, who travelled with him for a few stories, and he of course had several one-off companions to boot, including a Victorian pickpocket, a police detective, and an inventor of a time machine. But the TV and TV action comics weren't his only appearance in comic books. He's shown up in comic strips specifically for the annuals and made more recent appearances in his own limited series in Titan Comics. The third Doctor also continued to live on in novels from the Virgin Missing Adventures, the BBC Past Doctors and Telos novella ranges, as well as a swathe of short stories from the BBC and Big Finish short trips, as well as in annuals and the Virgin Decalogue series. He also has a substantial part to play in the two-book 8th Doctor Adventures novel Interference. But one of the more interesting examples of the third Doctor in print is the 1996 book Who Killed Kennedy. A journalist called James Stephens investigates the JFK assassination and finds links to the Doctor, with events taking place in parallel to basically the third Doctor's first 3 seasons. And if Dodo was shortchanged by the TV series, well then here she does not have a pleasant time at all, eventually culminating in her murder. But the Catalian of the Virgin and BBC's Past Doctor ranges hasn't meant an end to the third Doctor in novel form. Relatively recent novels include The Harvest of Time and Josephine and the Argonauts, the latter part of the ongoing Puffin Classics crossovers range. Outside of print media, the third Doctor has also enjoyed a rather lengthy tenure on audio as well. As with Hartnell and Troughton, Pertwee had passed away by the time Big Finish began producing audio drama, and so any third Doctor audio ventures with that company were told via the Companion Chronicles range initially, with various actors from the era telling new third Doctor stories in character. That said, Jon Pertwee did make a posthumous appearance in Zagreus, as audio taken from the fan film Devious was used to bring to life a ghostly third Doctor for the 8th Doctor to converse with, though it's tricky to hear what he's saying. And more recently, Big Finish have recast the third Doctor. Now, both John Culshaw and Tim Treloar have taken on the role. Culshaw in the Masterful box set and various other audio readings, and Treloar in the third Doctor range, with Culshaw assuming the role of the Brigadier. As with the other Doctor recast, this isn't a full-on impression, nor is it meant to be. But to be honest, Treloar does a good enough job that you kind of settle into it, and the range itself is a pretty strong one, which does a lot of the work as well. Basically, listening to these, eventually you tune in and it just feels like you're listening to the third Doctor, the Brigadier, and whoever his companion is. With Daisy Ashford and Sadie Miller playing their late mothers' roles of Liz Shaw and Sarah Jane Smith, the era is brought to life pretty respectfully. And elsewhere in the range, Katie Manning reprises Jo Grant and, in some, the older Jo Jones. But just because Jon Pertwee passed away before Big Finish formed doesn't mean he hasn't played the third Doctor on audio himself. In 1993, on BBC Radio 5, he and Nicholas Courtney and Elizabeth Sladen returned for The Paradise of Death. The trio recorded another, The Ghosts of N-Space, in 1994, which was eventually broadcast in 1996. And in both of those, another new companion is introduced, Sarah's photographer, Jeremy Fitz-Oliver, who went on to appear in some of the novels as well. The stories are fine, but their real selling point is the fact that they give us a bit of extra time with Jon Pertwee as the Third Doctor, something which is definitely welcome. Because like every subsequent classic Doctor who has returned extensively for Big Finish, Jon Pertwee continued to be the Doctor long after he left the show. When I was a child getting into Doctor Who, William Hartnell had been dead for 15 years and we hadn't long lost Patrick Troughton. So Jon Pertwee was like the elder statesman of the show at that point. And in anything that he appeared, which I happened to be watching, he always seemed to be dressed as the Doctor. And so, as a child, I began to wonder, maybe he actually is the Doctor. Where he cropped up elsewhere as the Doctor is quite notable in the stage play The Ultimate Adventure in 1989, the role eventually being taken over by Colin Baker and, for one night only, David Banks. But it was initially Jon Pertwee's Third Doctor who spearheaded The Ultimate Adventure. But obviously there's also his turn in Dimensions in Time, with his showing up beforehand for some banter with Noel Edmonds, meaning he probably has the most extensive role in the whole special. And also some now questionable advertisements.
Before you go, one question.
Yes?
Where in the galaxy is Sanusi?
Show us your tits and I'll tell you.
There's also a fun appearance in the BBC Radio 4 comedy sketch show series Skivers. In the fourth episode of the second series, broadcast in 1995, Jon Pertwee appears as both the Third Doctor and Wurzel Gummidge. In the episode, the Doctor, among other things, goes shopping and interviews for a new companion, Jemima Katie, who's played by Mel Gidroy. Now, Jemima Katie may have only appeared in a radio comedy sketch show, but that didn't stop her being explicitly referred to in the Eighth Doctor novel, The Gallifrey Chronicles. So, there we go, is Skivers canon. As for personal highlights for the Third Doctor in expanded media, I may have mentioned that this Doctor was never really towards the top of my favourites list, and that means that I don't usually tend to seek much out. But that said, I do happen to think that the Third Doctor range currently at Big Finish is one of their most consistent ones. Favourite examples of the Third Doctor on audio are The Annihilators, where he runs into the Second Doctor, Intelligence for War, which sees Liz Shaw arrested for treason, and his appearance in the Riversong box set New Recruit is a lot of fun. The Third Doctor and Joe episode in the rather choppy Legacy of Time box set is also easily the highlight of that set. And in terms of prose, I have to concede pretty much blanket ignorance. Years ago, I read The Last of the Gadarene and the first book of Interference, but my memory on them is so shaky that I don't want to firmly state an opinion either way. But I did remember enjoying them both. And that means I must have read Interference book 2, but I don't remember that at all. So, 54 years after he first appeared, 50 years after his run on TV came to an end, and 28 years after Jon Pertwee himself passed away, the fact that the Third Doctor continues to enjoy new adventures is that little bit of magic that this show, Doctor Who, is capable of. And even though his time on the show and the man who originated him are no longer with us, the Third Doctor is going nowhere. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this quick peek at what the Third Doctor's adventures look like in the expanded media, then you know how YouTube works. Please do hit the like thumb and share it around. It'd be great to get as many people along for the marathon as possible. The more, the merrier. And what do you think of the Third Doctor's adventures away from the main show? Is his comics run one of the best, or do you prefer the novels? Like me, do you think the Third Doctor on audio is thriving, or can you not get past the recast? And of course, with my limited personal experience with the Third Doctor spin-off media, particularly the novels, then chances are I've not mentioned your favourite at all. If I haven't, please do let me know what your favourites are. Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you back here soon for a ranking of all of the Third Doctor's TV stories. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and let's get counting down.